fear and conflict. Hello, once again, welcome. Thank you so much. I'm very happy we're sharing this. This is David. Welcome. Right, now this is going to be quite a long topic, so we're going to try and move as fast as we can, but of course, understanding is more important than speed. So please bear with the length of this topic. It's quite a long one. Now let's get started. The cause says that being afraid seems to be involuntary, something beyond your own control. Yet I, and always when it says I, standing for Christ's consciousness, have said already that only constructive acts should be involuntary. My control can take over everything that does not matter, while my guidance can direct everything that does, if you so choose. Fear cannot be controlled by me, but it can be self-controlled. Fear prevents me from giving you my control. The presence of fear shows that you have raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. This removes them from my control and makes you feel personally responsible for them. This is an obvious confusion of levels. Now, let's try and deconstruct this paragraph right here. I think the first sentence is quite clear. Being afraid seems to be involuntary, so it's suggesting that it's actually not. You can master it instead of being its apparent victim or slave. Yeah. Now, what it's also saying here that fear is what, let's say, takes you away from that, the atonement or wherever it is that you want to get, with this cause. It prevents you from, what do you say, fear, attack thoughts, all those kind of thoughts are the ones that keep you away, actually, okay? Now, what they're saying here is that the presence of fear shows that you have raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. What does body thoughts mean? This means what we've been saying all along in all the other topics that we've covered. Body thoughts stand for projections, image making. Nothing to do with creations out of love, but projections, image making, coming from that idea, that belief that you're separate from everything else. This is what is meant, in my opinion, as body thoughts. Yeah. Now, when you raise those to the level of the mind, you give them the same importance. Things that are not real. Remember, the mind is real. Its projections are not real. Its creations are real. Now, when you take body thoughts, which are the projections, which are not real, and then you equate them with reality, bring them to the level of the mind, then, as a cause says, you have removed them from the control of, let's say, the Holy Spirit or Christ or the the Creator, whichever words you want to use, because as we said, the cause is not necessarily Christian, but we're using Christian terminology, so please bear with that. And once you remove them from the divine will, let's call it, you start to feel personally responsible for them. Okay. You would not excuse insane behavior on your part by saying that you could not help it. Why then should you condone insane thinking? And that is very true. Many of us are not going to excuse insane behavior. We won't tolerate it. We won't stand for it. Yet we all tolerate and stand for insane thinking. That is a question that is being posed to us here. There is a confusion here that you would do well to look at clearly. You may believe that you're responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is that you are responsible for what you think because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. Yeah? Have you seen that? It is only at this level that you can exercise choice. Only at the level of thought. You do not have choice at the level of spirit, at least not in the sense that we understand choice. And you do not have a choice at the level of physicality because it's an effect. It simply is a reflection of the inside, the mind. So you cannot exactly manipulate physicality directly because it's a reflection of the mental. Okay. What you do comes from what you think. You cannot separate yourself from the truth by giving autonomy to behavior. This is controlled by me automatically as soon as you place what you think under my guidance. Okay? Whenever you are afraid, it is a sure sign that you would have allowed your mind to miscreate and have not allowed me to guide it. Yeah? So as soon as you surrender your will, your mind to divine will, to divine mind, automatically your behavior and your mind and everything will be part of the river. Let's call it a river. Imagine your boat that is flowing along the divine river called the divine mind, if we can use those. I'm just trying to use different terminology here so that we can understand this topic from different angles. Okay? Yeah? So as soon as you place what you think under his guidance, then automatically everything will be controlled. You don't have to do anything. Okay? Now, whenever you're afraid, it's a sign that you have refused to do so. You have allowed your mind to miscreate, to make images, to believe in the separation, and you have refused guidance. You have refused to surrender to divine will. Whenever you're afraid, it is a sign that that is what is happening. That is why they keep saying, let go, surrender. Okay? It is pointless to believe that controlling the outcome of misthought can result in healing. Yeah? When you are fearful, you have chosen wrongly. That is why you feel responsible for it. You must change your mind, not your behavior. And this is a matter of willingness. You do not need guidance except at the mind level. Correction belongs only at the level where change is possible. Change does not mean anything at the symptom level where it cannot work. In other words, change at the physical level is meaningless. Okay? You cannot control the outcome of bad thought, of fearful thinking, and hope that that is going to result in healing. It never does. The only thing you can do is move towards right-mindedness. Change your mind, not your behavior. And that is a matter of choosing to do so, willingness. Okay? The correction of fear is your responsibility. That is your responsibility. When you ask for release from fear, you are implying that it is not your responsibility. You should ask instead for help in the conditions that have brought the fear about. These conditions always entail a willingness to be separate. Are we following that? Ask for help in the conditions that have brought about the fear, and always, these conditions always come from a willingness, as in a choice, to be separate. So that gives you a clue of where you should be targeting your request for help from divinity. At that level, you can help it. You're much too tolerant of your mind wandering and are passively condoning your mind's miscreations. You're passively allowing it, and you're way too tolerant. The particular result does not matter, but the fundamental error does. And the fundamental error, as we've seen, is what? Is a willingness to be separate. So the result of this willingness to be separate, the many results that come out of that, don't really matter. What matters is the very willingness to be separate. The correction is always the same. Before you choose to do anything, ask me if your choice is in accord with mine. Yeah? If you're sure that it is, there will be no fear. Wow. Very simple. Here, in a nutshell, again, it's talking about surrendering your will to divine will, because it is one and the same thing. We are facing fear here. This is what we're talking about, fear. And remember, we said in a previous video or in a previous topic, yeah, that there is a fear from surrendering to divine will. In fact, we equate our freedom, our release, we equate it with imprisonment. We think that we are actually losing our freedom, we're getting imprisoned when we surrender to divine will. Whereas it's the opposite. You're actually gaining your freedom when you do so. Yeah? And again, it's repeating, because now the topic is squarely on fear. Again, it's repeating the points that if you are in accord with divine will, you will notice that there will be no fear. You won't have to fight it, you won't have to bury it, you won't have to pretend that it's not there. It simply will not exist. Fear is always a sign of strain, arising whenever what you want conflicts with what you do. Very interesting. Okay? Now, as we read this, let's first read it, and then I'd like us to use an example, a very simple example. Again, an example that all of us can identify with, and many of us can identify with the idea of fear in relation to money. Because I'm sure we've all been afraid that, oh, we have too little money to meet our ends or to achieve a particular goal. So in a sense, you're in conflict and you have a lot of strain inside because you want a particular thing, but you do a completely different thing. For example, you want to buy or to pay a particular bill or buy a particular thing or do something for somebody. That is what you want. But then you end up not doing it because you're afraid that you're going to spend your last penny and you'll have nothing more for tomorrow. So this example, I want us to consider this example again once we finish this paragraph. So let's read on. Fear is always a sign of strain, arising whenever what you want conflicts with what you do. This situation arises in two ways. First, you can choose to do conflicting things, either simultaneously or successively. This produces conflicted behavior, which is intolerable to you because the part of the mind that wants to do something else is outraged. Okay? Second, you can behave as you think you should, but without entirely wanting to do so. I think we identify with these two examples very easily. How many times have you ever behaved as you think you should, but you really don't want to do so? Yeah? Again, this produces this time it produces consistent behavior, but it produces great strain within. Yeah. Now, what this is trying to say that whenever you have those two possibilities, and I think when we gave the example of money and fear from wanting to do something that requires money, but you don't want to spend that money because you're afraid that you're going to run out of it for tomorrow, for example. So you end up not doing what it is that you really want to do, and this produces strain. So in this case, you have behaved as you think you should. You have held back. Sorry, this is the first example. You have saved and held back on your spending and not done what it is that you really wanted to do, whether it's to give somebody a gift or pay a bill on time or whatever, and that has produced strain. Or some other times you know very well, let's say you should speak the truth, for example, yeah, but you've been told no, don't speak the truth because it's going to cause this and that and that and that to happen, and then you're afraid of that happening, so you hold back. Okay, but your mind is driving you nuts because you really wanted to speak the truth. Long story short, all it's saying is that once again, when you see fear, you should remember that it's a sign that you have strain, that the strain is coming from doing something that is opposite to what you really want. Okay, as in there's a conflict there. And also fear is another sign that you have refused to surrender to divine will. So you see, in this slide and in the last slide, we've seen two signs, two things that can let you know why you have fear, or let you know that you will have fear if you do a certain thing. Now let's get specific. The last slide said that if you're not willing to surrender your will to divine will, then you're likely to bump into fear. But the minute you surrender your will to divine will, there will be no fear. It simply disappears. And then over here it says, the minute you are not congruent with yourself, you don't have integrity, you have an inside conflict, you're going to have a strain, and you're automatically also going to have fear, because fear is always a sign of strain arising whenever what you want conflicts with what you do. In both cases, the mind and the behavior are out of accord. They are out of agreement, resulting in a situation in which you are doing what you do not wholly want to do. Okay? So in both cases, the mind and the behavior are not in agreement, and you find yourself in a spot whereby what you're doing is not really what you want to do. This arouses a sense of coercion. You feel like you're being forced. that usually produces rage and anger. And the minute that happens, projection is likely to follow. For example, you start blaming people, you start feeling under attack, or you start imagining that you're under attack, or you've been denied, or you're a victim or something. The minute this happens, the rage, the anger within you will prompt projection. Okay? Whenever there is fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. Your mind is therefore split, and your behavior inevitably becomes erratic. Correcting at the behavioral level can shift the error from the first to the second type, but will not obliterate the fear. Remember what we said a few slides ago. The first type is whereby you're doing two conflicting things. Okay? The second type is whereby you want to do one thing, but you're doing another thing, and therefore your mind has gone crazy because it's under strain. You're doing something that you don't really want to do. Now, what this is saying, the last sentence here on this slide is saying, is that if you attempt to correct this problem at the behavior level, you're not really fixing the problem. All you're doing is changing from the first type of fear, we said, whereby you're doing you're taking two conflicting actions, or two different types of behavior that are in conflict. You're simply moving from that point and moving into the second level of error, whereby you're doing something but your mind doesn't really want to. Yeah? So it's saying, forget about trying to correct things at the behavior level. Go back always to the root. So this is quite an interesting study of fear that we're undertaking. It's kind of psychology simplified and brought to the level of spirit and mind, to a level where we're not usually used to hearing people talk about fear in this way. But as you can see, the Course in Miracles is trying to simplify fear, or give us an alternative look on fear, and actually link fear with the idea of atonement and the illusion of separation. Okay, so it's bringing fear to an all new level that we're not accustomed to thinking of it or dealing with it at a certain level, or looking at it in a particular way. So I hope you do appreciate this, and actually this is one of those videos that I think it would be nice if you went back through it again, or maybe even just read the text material again 2-3 times, so that you can actually start to really get it. It's actually quite simple. This is one of the simpler videos. It's just that it's quite wordy. It is possible to reach a state in which you bring your mind under my guidance without conscious effort. But this implies a willingness that you have not developed as yet. So yes, it's possible. You can reach a state whereby you just completely 100% permanently 24/7 surrender your will to divine will. And then you won't even have to make a conscious effort of it. Automatically you will be guided. Automatically things will just flow. Automatically you will be full of synchronicities. Things will just happen when they need to happen, exactly on time, no mistakes. You will have no doubt, no fear. You've all had these stories. You've had so many sages say that is the best way you can live. We've heard of all this. But now what the Course is saying is that most of us are not yet there. The level of willingness that this takes, to the point where you can completely let go, that choosing 100%, that level of willingness is something you have to develop. Most of us have not developed that level yet. So it's not something that will, okay, maybe it might happen that in the morning you'll wake up and you're at that level, but it also could be, depending on your belief set, something that you'll have to develop, work towards, and eventually it will get there. The Holy Spirit cannot ask more than you are willing to do. You will never be forced. The strength to do comes from your undivided decision. There is no strain in doing God's will or the Creator's will as soon as you recognize that it is also your own. That's a funny thing. Think about this. You're made in the image and likeness of the Creator. Therefore, the Creator's will is your will, and your will is His will. But as long as you're projecting, you imagine that no, your Creator's will is in conflict with your will, and it will actually do you no good. Okay, but once you're actually there, you'll realize that actually this is my will. The Creator's will is my will. So there becomes no strain. And remember, if there is no strain, there is no fear. Okay? The lesson here is quite simple, but particularly apt to be overlooked. I will therefore repeat it, urging you to listen. Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted in what it wants, producing inevitable strain because wanting and doing are discordant. This can be corrected only by accepting a unified goal. The first corrective step in undoing the error is to know first that the conflict is an expression of fear. Say to yourself that you must somehow have chosen not to love, or the fear could not have arisen. If you did not choose to love, then the fear would arise. But if you chose to love, the fear would never arise. Then the whole process of correction becomes nothing more than a series of practical steps in the larger process of accepting the atonement as the remedy. These steps may be summarized in this way. As you can see, like I said, this is actually a very simple topic. It's just quite wordy. So, I encourage you to go through it a few times to really get it. But it's actually quite simple. So, now before we start the steps, let's recap, okay? Know first that the conflict is an expression of fear. Say to yourself that you must somehow have chosen not to love, or the fear could not have arisen. And then the steps from there towards correction go as follows. Know first that this is fear. Okay, that is easy. Fear arises from lack of love. That is easy. The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. That is logical. Perfect love is the atonement or the atonement. Okay? I have emphasized that the miracle or the expression of atonement is always a sign of respect from the worthy to the worthy. Yeah. Remember, you are already worthy. There is no one who is not worthy. Okay? There is no one who is not worthy. And remember, we talked about charity. Yeah? Remember, we talked about charity whereby you look upon your brother or your sister and you look upon them as if they had already seen themselves as who they really are. Even if they have not achieved that, you achieve it for them by looking at them from that standpoint. Even if you cannot look at yourself like that, but you can try and look at your brother and sister like that. Okay? This is what it means by a sign of respect from the worthy to the worthy. The recognition of this worth is re-established by the atonement. It is obvious then that when you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need atonement. You have done something loveless, having chosen without love. This is precisely the situation for which the atonement was offered. That is exactly the point it was created, you could say. The need for the remedy inspired its establishment. As long as you recognize only the need for the remedy, you will remain fearful. However, as soon as you accept the remedy, you have abolished the fear. This is how true healing occurs. Once again, I know some of those words leave us with a lot of questions, such as so how do you accept the remedy, and so on and so forth. Remember, this is a one-year course, a course in miracles. Don't try and have all the answers today. Just try and understand to the point you can understand today. So just try and understand this paragraph, for example, as much as you can understand it. And next time you go through it again, you'll understand it another level deeper, And also, once you finish the course and you come back to this, trust me, it's going to look a whole lot more clear, magnificently much more clearer, because you'll have now the whole picture. You'll have finished the whole course and now you'll be doing your reviews, okay? So don't worry if you have questions. They will be answered in their own time. Everyone experiences fear. Everybody experiences fear. Yet it would take very little right thinking to realize why fear occurs. Few appreciate the real power of the mind, and no one remains fully aware of it all the time. We are all in this situation. Very few of us really appreciate the real power of the mind. It's crazy. I mean, this idea that faith can move mountains. If that is true, imagine that is just a speck of the power of the mind, And even those who really appreciate the real power of the mind, very few of us are able to remain fully aware of it all the time. In fact, take me for example. When I'm in the zone, I'm very aware of the power of the mind, although not really fully appreciating to the level whereby I am in it, you could say. And sometimes 10 minutes after I've walked out of that spiritual practice that I was doing, I might completely lapse back into the place whereby I've forgotten much of that. And I have to consciously remind myself. So no one fully remains fully aware of it all the time. No one, as long as you're one of the you're amongst the separated ones, let's call them that. As long as you are at some level holding the belief of separation, you will not remain fully aware of it all the time. Okay? However, if you hope to spare yourself from fear, there are some things you must realize and realize fully. The mind is very powerful and never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Every instant it is creating. It is hard to recognize that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally move mountains. That is the immense power of the mind. Imagine if that explanation is true, that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally, not figuratively, literally move Mount Everest. Can you imagine that kind of power? Can you even imagine that kind of power? The cause is saying that is the power of the mind. Few of us appreciate that power, the real power of the mind. And no one remains fully aware of it all the time. Yet, if you hope to spare yourself from fear, you must realize this and realize it fully. If you hope to spare yourself from fear, you must realize this and realize it fully. I mean, let's stop here a little bit. If the mind can literally move Mount Everest, what else can it do? Think about all the problems you think that you have in your life, all the challenges, all the issues, all the, literally, we all have problems, okay? Who put them there? Your mind. Not my mind, not somebody's. Your mind put them there. Remember, your life, you're living the projection of your mind. That is your life. Okay? I'm not talking about little things that, this guy came to see you in the morning at 8 a.m. and what a coincidence, it was exactly the guy you needed. I'm talking about immense power. Think magnitudes bigger than that. Think like this. The whole universe conspired or conspires. The whole universe conspires to make what your thoughts are thinking come true at some level. That is the power we're talking about. So, when you think about your problems and you think about how they're terrorizing you, then you really need to understand the power of the mind and realize it fully. Because if you don't really accept and realize how powerful the mind is, then you really don't have much hope to spare yourself from fear. In my opinion, that's what this part of the text is saying. It appears at first glance that to believe such power about yourself is arrogant. But that is not the real reason you do not believe it. You prefer to believe that your thoughts cannot exert real influence because you are actually afraid of them. This may allay awareness of the guilt, but at the cost of perceiving the mind as impotent. Okay? Yeah. If you believe that what you think is ineffectual, you may cease to be afraid of it, but you are hardly likely to respect it. There are no idle thoughts, though. All thinking produces form at some level. Let's try and walk through this backwards. All thinking produces form at some level, which means there are no idle thoughts. Okay? But if you believe there are idle thoughts, or if you believe that there's some thoughts that are, that won't even affect anything, you know, that kind of idea. If you believe that, then you're not going to be afraid of your thoughts, okay? But you're hardly going to respect your thoughts either. You're going to just say, oh, well, you can do what you want. You're going to let your thoughts trash your mind, you know, basically, in another way of putting it, okay? Yeah? So, do you understand the very, it's a sublime logic here, okay? What they're trying to suggest, and it's very difficult to grasp it right now, and if you don't grasp it, remember, just relax, you don't have to grasp it right now. But what they're suggesting here, what the course is saying here is that it is not because you think it's arrogant for you to think of your mind as so powerful that you choose to pretend that your mind is not powerful. So it's not that you're not really concerned that, oh, it's so arrogant for me to think it's so powerful. No, that is not why you're choosing to downgrade your mind. That is not why you're choosing it. Why you're actually choosing to downgrade your mind, or at least to downgrade your idea of your mind, is that you prefer to believe that your thoughts don't have much influence because you're actually afraid of them. Yeah. Why? Well, for one, it makes you feel less guilty. To think, to be able to blame somebody. Yeah. To be able to say, oh, it's not my fault. That thing happened in my life because of that guy and that situation and that God and that devil and all this. Yeah. Okay. So you've downgraded the power of your own mind, because then that way you can, oh, it's not my fault. Let me blame something else. I don't want to get all the guilt. It's not my fault. Okay. Because the minute you accept the power of your mind, you will have to take responsibility. The minute you accept and you acknowledge, whoa, my mind can create worlds, then you're going to stop dodging the bullet and you're going to start taking responsibility. So this is all part of that egotistical, dodging game, preventing you from finally accepting your status as who you really are. Okay? Now, finally, have you ever heard of an acronym that goes like this? FEAR. You probably have heard it. A lot of people say this. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Have you ever heard of this? You probably heard of this. Now, this is just my own summary. This is not from the course, but this is just my own summary. I just wanted to put it in there. I am assuming that you've heard of this before. It's very common. In fact, if you Google this, you'll find how common it is. It's got nothing to do with the Course in Miracles. I don't know where it came from, but it's now quite a common saying that fear is false evidence appearing real. Okay? Now, just take that quick, what you see in front of you on the screen, and run it through everything that we've talked about the Course right from the very beginning up until this point, and see how that sits with you. Okay? Just feel it. Just sit down and see how that sits with you. For me, I found it a very good and powerful way to remember quite a lot of the lessons within the Course, because it immediately reminds me, the minute I feel fear, I can immediately run through this false evidence appearing real, and somehow I can trigger within me a lot of the things that I've learned from the Course and and beyond. So yeah, that was quite a long one, and I thank you for your patience and your time. This is one of those topics which to me are very simple, but they are very wordy. It's quite a long topic, and I think just reading through it a few times is going to help you. So go ahead and read through it a few times, and each reading is going to give you a different interpretation. And you might want to read through it, let's say 2 times today, and then give it a rest, and tomorrow read through it 1 more time or something, and you'll notice that you'll get different things out of that. So thanks again for your time, and namaste.